Okay, for 6.3, let me do two additional homework problems for you related to composites. We'll do number 29. F of x, they tell us, is 3x to the minus 1, and g of x is 2x minus 7. And the question we have to answer is, what is g of f of x? Alright, so what we do is we look at the adder function, which is g. Okay, this is our g of x. So everywhere we see an x in g of x, we're not going to write x, we're going to write f of x. So let's start. G of x is 2, and then x. We're not going to write x, instead we're going to substitute in f of x. And then we continue on with g of x to minus 7. This here is f of x. And then we simplify, and we get 2 times 3 is 6. 6 to the negative 1 is 1 over x minus 7. So our answer for g of f of x is 6 over x minus 7. Now for purposes of the domain, okay, when we do composites, to find the domain, we look at the domain of the inner, we look at the domain of the answer, and we look for the domain overlap. So what I suggested you do is you make a little number line. Okay, the inner function is f of x. F of x is 3x to the minus 1, which is the same thing as 3 over x. What's the restriction on f of x? X can't be 0. We cannot have a 0 in the denominator. So the domain of the inner, which is f of x, is all reals except x equals 0. And so if I draw that out on the number line, the domain of f of x is all reals except 0. Now I look at my answer, which is 6 over x minus 7. Are there any restrictions on x? Well, there is. Similar to f of x. You cannot have x equals 0. So in terms of the answer, it is also all reals except x equals 0. And so when we plot our answer on our number line, okay, we come up with that. So when we look at our domain for f of x and our domain for an answer, we look for the overlap. And the overlap is all reals except x equals 0. And that is our domain. In number 33, okay, we're asked to do f of x. Okay, so we start with f of x because f is our outer, and we have 3. And then we hit our first x. Well, what do we substitute in for x? We substitute in f of x. So we put f of x in, and that's it. And that's to the negative 1. Okay, so this x right here, that f of x is right here. So now we have to simplify. It's 3, which is this 3. 3 to the negative 1. We have to take 3 to the negative 1. And then x to the negative 1 raised to the negative 1. Well, it's power to power. So negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. And when we look at 3 and 3 to the negative 1, well, 3 to the negative 1 is 1 over 3. And so our final answer is x. So f of x, the answer is x. Now for the domain of the inner, which is f of x, is, well, all reals except x equals 0. For the answer, there is no restriction. Our answer is x. There's no restriction, so it's all reals. And the overlap, the intersection between a domain of all reals except 0 and all reals is all reals except x equals 0. So for number 33, f of x is x, and the domain is all reals except x equals 0. Hope that helps. Good luck.